So today we're going to talk about how to find the slope of a line. There are 4 different types of slope you could get. You could have a negative slope of a line, you could have a positive slope of a line, you could have a zero slope, and you could have an undefined slope. And that's what those 4 would look like, as you can see there. Now, what is slope? Slope is just a fancy word for meaning rate of change. How fast is a line increasing or decreasing? We think about a positive slope like a set of stairs. You could think of a negative slope like an escalator that's going down. Okay, and zero is something that's remaining constant and not changing. Undefined also has some variables that it is remaining constant, and we'll talk about how to know the difference between those two. So we have a formula that you can follow. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and you can see that m is the letter we use to stand for slope. We always use that. You'll use that letter M throughout math to stand for slope. So here's 2 problems that you could be asked, and we're going to talk about 2 different ways to solve this kind of problem. So if we have points 1, 2, and 7, 7, I would first take a moment and identify my first point is 1, 2, so my first x, my x1 is 1, and my y1 is 2, and my x2 is 7, and my y2 is second. And all that 2 stands for is the second point, not anything, I'm not squaring anything, nothing at all like that. So I take those points and I plug them into my formula here, 7 minus 2, 7 minus 1, slope equals 5, 6. So what that means is on a graph, if I were starting at any given start point, my point from there would be to move up on your y-axis 5 units and to the right on your x-axis 6 units. Okay, so slope is our change in y over our change in x, which you can see with our formulas y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. Now, how could we look at this in a table to either check our work or to think of it differently, but the same idea, is if I put my 2 points in a table and I take a moment and ask myself, well, what do I do to go from 2 to 7? Well, that's an increase of 5. And what do I do to go from 1 to 7? Well, that's an increase of 6. And if I know slope is my change in y over my change in x, then I would say my slope here is 5, 6. And what is nice about that is that that answer, doing it in a table, matches my answer from using a formula. So that's a good way to check myself. If I try the next problem here, 5, negative 2, and negative 5, 8, identify what x1 and y1 are in x2 and y2, and plug those in. y2 minus y1. Now that y1 is negative, so it's real important that you hold that in parentheses. x2 minus x1. Now 8 minus a negative 10 is like 8 plus 10, which is positive 10. So if I have 10 divided by negative 10, that will simplify to be negative 1. Which if I were graphing, I would want that to be over 1. It would mean go down 1 on my y-axis and to the right 1 on my x-axis. Now if we put that in our table, like we did the last one, let's give that a try. So there's our table. We find our change in y from negative 2 to positive 8 is a jump of positive 10. But from positive 5 to negative 5, that's a drop of 10. So that's giving us a slope of positive 10 over negative 10, which indeed is still negative 1 and matches the negative 1 we had the last time. So now let's take a look at a problem where we have one of the variables staying the same. We have the points negative 6, 0 and 7, 0. So let me put these in my table just so you can see. Okay, y is clearly not changing here. It was 0 in both times. So if I put it over here, I get 0 over 7 minus and negative 6 is 7 plus 6, which is 13. And that's 0. 0 divided by any number is 0. If I have 0 things and I divide it between 13 friends, all friends are still getting nothing. The way that shows in the table, though, as you can see, is that y has stayed constant. It isn't changing at all. And for that reason, its slope is 0, which matches and again is a good way to check. Now let's take a look at this one, where instead of y staying the same, x is going to stay the same. If I fill in my formula, 2 minus 0, negative 6 minus a negative 6, well now we have 2 minus 0 is 2, but negative 6 minus a negative 6 is like negative 6 plus 6. And when you try to divide by 0, mathematicians do not like that. We call that undefined. It is not possible to do that. And the way that's going to show up in your table is right here. When you have a constant x value, you are going to get a slope that is undefined.